Hello and welcome. The promise of work and some economic security is quickly shattered for thousands of women each year as they end up in the dark and often violent world of sex trafficking. It's an issue that's touched the nerve of some high-profile activists, including Oscar-winning actress Emma Thompson, who filmed a video as part of the campaign against it. The video has been accompanied by a unique exhibition known as Journey, which takes visitors through the grim reality of the sex trade. Well, Emma Thompson joins us on the show today to discuss the campaign and some of the issues it highlights. Emma, thanks for joining us.
It's really good to meet you too, Riz.
My pleasure. I have to ask you, I saw the viral video you've done on the sex trafficking industry. It's very stark, very in your face. I mean, quite disturbing. Tell me first how you got involved with that. What made you get into that particular issue?
Well, I'm chair of a foundation called the Helen Bamber Foundation, and Helen Bamber's 82. She's my mentor. She started her work as a human rights activist when she was 19, and she went into Bergen-Belsen with the Jewish Relief Unit. And that's fueled a lifetime's work of human rights. And she founded something called the Medical Foundation for Victims of Torture 20 years ago. And at that time, we were working with people coming from the dictatorships in Chile and Argentina. You know, there were an awful lot of exiles coming over, and a lot of stories were being told at that time by Ariel Dorfman and people like that. And then she, as with a lot of institutions, you know, when charities become very big, because it did become very big, they become slightly more rigid. And Helen is what I would call a cutting-edge activist. She works at the Rock Face. So when people were referred to the Medical Foundation for Victims of Torture who weren't able to tick the right boxes, because the definition of torture, according to the Convention for Human Rights, is someone who's been hurt by someone in the state apparatus. Do you see what I mean? But there are so many other forms of torture. And Helen's found that she was working with people who came from all sorts of places, who had suffered dreadfully but couldn't tick the boxes, so couldn't get into the programme. So she decided to start a new foundation, and it's that foundation that I'm chair of. And we work with refugees who have come from all over the world and have been through various kinds of terrible situations. We work with Chechens, Somalians, Sudanese, really from everywhere. And one of our populations is women who've been trafficked.
I know you also got Sam Roddick, the daughter of the late dynamic Anita Roddick, involved from Body Shop, into this as well. And she again is very much into the campaigning to provide some sort of protection for these women.
Yeah.
And also to humanise them. And there's a quote, and I think it's you in the research I was reading, where it said, "Move fate by an inch and it could be me or worse, my daughter." And is that the difficulty, actually getting the human face out?
It is. Very much so, because trafficking, people think, oh, it's a bit dodgy, or they've actually agreed, they knew it was sex work, they knew it was, you know, they know what they're getting into, they're just coming over here to make money out of us. I mean, I hear people saying that. They have no idea what really goes on. And I thought people were better informed than in fact they are. And when Sam and I got together and started talking about this, we were amazed. But I met through Helen's foundation a woman who had been trafficked and who told her story with such extraordinary articulacy that I said, can you help me to make some kind of piece about this so that we can bring people in to feel what it might be like? I thought it's better to make a piece of art that is engaging and that invites you in, instead of going, look, this is horrible, because people just go, I can't cope. You know, everyone's got problems in their lives. It's very difficult when people talk about charity fatigue, and charity, you know, it's just a word that I don't want to be using anymore. It's deeply Victorian. You can't blame them. I mean, everyone has a life. You're asking people to take on the problems of the world. You must find a way of inviting them in as joyful a way as you can to take part in the betterment of, you know, our world.
It's a difficult subject, though, this one in particular. You know, when we said we were going to be interviewing you, a number of our viewers, loads sent emails, and I want to put a couple of these to you. Now, the first one actually came from New Zealand, from Zelina in Hamilton in New Zealand. She says, "All I have to say on this is good for you. Actors can probably do more than politicians in these kinds of cases, as people already love them." Now, to what extent are people noticing because it's you?
Well, I tried very hard to get out of the way, because I don't like being this sort of celebrity voice. I think I can use my voice, but mostly I like to use it behind the scenes. So what I did was it's easy for me, for instance, to talk to the Mayor of London and say, can we have Trafalgar Square as a site? Mm. It's easy for me to ring up the police and say, I'd like to come and talk to the High Commissioner about how we can get together, how artists and policemen can work together, how we can melt the boundaries between our civil and civic institutions and artists and creative people, and stop saying, look, you belong over there and you belong over there and never the twain shall meet.
I want to give you a couple more emails we got. This one's from Oman, from Khalid Al-Haribi, who says, human trafficking is a global problem caused by unfair distribution of wealth and power in less developed countries. Emma Thompson's a well-respected, accomplished actress who leaders and their people will listen to. And then Paula Varley in Norwich in the UK adds, frankly, I'd be amazed if Emma Thompson can make much difference on to such an issue. It's an illicit trade and traders don't file tax returns and or have their business overseen or regulated. So how will Ms Thompson measure her success?
Well, very good questions. Well, there's lots of ways. So let's start with raising awareness, first of all. Trafficking, as your young lady from Norwich says, is illicit. It's a criminal activity, therefore it occurs, underground, but it occurs on the streets. So, for instance, we had the journey in Trafalgar Square, and two women came to me and said, we've got a house on our street where we see these girls coming in and out, And I said, tell the police, go in, ask. And they were very much, fired up to actually do something. It's no good relying just on the police, as she says, it's a shadow industry. I mean, that's why the business industry, the sort of above-board business industry, should be taking part in this, because money doesn't have a morality, but it moves around quite a lot, and it's absolutely ridiculous to think that the amounts of money that are made in this industry aren't passed through the proper channels as well. I mean, I know they don't file tax returns, but nonetheless, you can make £250,000 off one girl in a year and then sell her on.
Let me ask you about Journey, or at least let's let our viewers know a little bit about Journey, because it's tied to that video you did on the internet, which was the story of Maria/Elena.
Yeah.
And it's 7 containers rusty containers which you put around Trafalgar Square, showing basically the sort of the seedier side of the sex industry. Well, I guess the real side.
It's not really the seedy. It's not the seedier side of the sex industry. It's really the journey of someone from hope and aspiration right way through to being able to actually tell the story, but also being in a container which contains the language of vilification and nullification that comes at you from the authorities, from our Home Office. So when people come out, hopefully, they will have a sense of what it might be like to go on a journey like that, to go into the abyss, and come out again able to tell it. So it's a cathartic experience rather than one that promotes feelings but doesn't give people the tools with which to act. So when people came out, we would talk to them, because a lot of people were quite disturbed by it, men and women, and we would say, well, first of all, sign the petition to ratify the convention, because that's very important. And this is in answer to this question. Once we've ratified that, then we can start to work out pan-European and pan-global strategies, because we have to have people talking to each other on all levels. I mean, my NGO, the Helen Bamber Foundation, needs to be talking to people in Lithuania and in Albania about how to protect and to serve these women after they've come out of the experience. And in that way, when the women are able to heal themselves, and heal themselves to a point where, for instance, they can testify against the traffickers, then we're going to start getting somewhere. Because you've got to start putting these people away, and you've also got to start finding out who they are and why they do it.
An email that came in from the Netherlands, from Rennie Polman, says, it is probably more sensible to provide protection for women in sex work rather than try to change it through specific measures that only target the international transport of women. How do you feel about that suggestion? And also, how do you regard the legitimization of the sex industry, where at least there are some controls?
Well, there's 2 points to make about that. They legitimized the sex industry in Sweden. And unfortunately, the results of that were they found that there was far more trafficking. It didn't help because It just made it very much
Release the
easier
valve
for people to be used. It was still not possible to tell who had been forced into this and who had not. So I'm not sure. I mean, in our country, we've been having a big debate about criminalising the use of prostitutes, which is ridiculous because you'd be criminalising 40% of the bloody country, you know. So that's. I don't think that criminalisation or legalisation is the answer to the problem. I think that we're going to have to act on many different levels, but one of the things we've got to do is examine the customer. We've got to start talking to the customers and saying, look, you know, you have to get involved in this. Why are you doing this? What is the motive? Do you really want to be buying sex from somebody who's been enslaved, who is not doing this, who is not keeping the money? If you don't, how can we sort of control that as well? And that's difficult, but it's certainly possible.
Let me ask you about the issue of HIV/AIDS, because I know, I mean, this is one aspect of your campaign.
Yes,
of course,
absolutely.
That's tied
This story, I mean, it's about storytelling. This story came out of work with one of our populations, but you know, there are so many others. But in my view, everything is connected. Everything is connected. What I find frustrating, actually, at the moment, is the fact that people are still talking about things like causes. You go, what are you talking about? This is the world we live in. All the things that are wrong with our world are connected. All of them, poverty being, you know, one of the biggest issues. Look at poverty, take that at the bottom, is bound with hoops of steel to the issues of sex traffic and HIV. And sex traffic is bound again with HIV because men pay more for unprotected sex. They pay more for sex with a virgin, get hundreds of thousands of pounds for a young virgin. You know, everything is connected. And it's this process of joining the dots that, you know, in my more or less 50 years on this planet, I'm so much, well, I'm enjoying because I'm very curious about it, but I'm also frustrated by people separating things out and saying, no, well, we're interested in this and we're only interested in children. You say, well, everyone is a nexus. Each person that you take is a nexus of connections with human beings with all sorts of other challenges and all sorts of ages and all sorts of genders. So, of course, it's connected. And what's so interesting about working with survivors is if you think of yourself as simply a stitch in the human fabric, you know, which I do. I think we're all just stitches, but we all are connected. So whilst, you know, my stitch may be many, many, many yards away down the, you know, the shawl from someone who's living in the Sudan, I'm still connected. Then you come to a survivor, and a survivor's like a sort of sequin, because if you shine a light on someone who's really survived and is able to tell their story, you find so much wisdom and so much, they have so much to offer. They should be our mentors, and yet we tend to say we can't cope with their suffering, so we push them aside, we treat them like second-class citizens, and actually we treat them like that because they've suffered and we're frightened of their suffering.
Leads me to a very interesting question we got by email from Lorraine in Greenwich in London, who says, average women can make a difference. In fact, everyone can make a difference, even an actress. We live in a world where people say, what can I do? It's only me.
Yeah.
How can we get the only me people to join in?
It's never only you, never think like that. It's think of yourself as the stitch. You're connected to everyone. I mean, the first thing you can do is walk down the road, and if you see somebody who's homeless sitting down there, talk to them. Just talk to them. It's easy. You have the tools at your disposal absolutely all the time. If you want to join an organisation, there's millions of them. You know, look around, shop around, as they say, and find the one that really resonates politically and emotionally with you, something that you really, really believe in, and get going. Everyone, all you need to do is get up and open your eyes. You can read a newspaper and find an article that inspires you to do something, but just do something because it will make you happy.
And this is the thing you brought up earlier, the fatigue, charity fatigue, as you say, or the idea that people are bombarded with so much stuff, they sort of almost lose the will to pick something, or because everything seems to be a problem. How do we get around that?
We get around that. We have to change this perception. And over the last 50 years, when the notion of institutionalised and professionalised charity came in, because you must remember that this is a very, very new thing. These huge problems being dealt by huge, almost corporate charities is a very new thing. And people understandably are asking questions about that because large corporate charities need a lot of money to keep going. On the other hand, they're doing very good work. I mean, my poverty NGO, ActionAid, is a brilliant organisation, but they need millions every year to keep going. And I help them to raise that money, and I believe in them, and I believe in the work that they do on the ground with HIV/AIDS, with poverty, on every level. They really do join the dots. But I understand that they do seem to be just another big... And I think that what we need to do is to as it were, foster our will to receive and to receive the other, and to actually just engage with the people that we find around us. I think that's what we're beginning to lose. You know, when you pass people sitting down on the street who have nothing, people will just walk by them. Well, why? Why do we do that? That's sort of mad. So our dysfunction is, you know, really in this ability that we have to sort of dislocate ourselves from people right around us. So if you don't want to join a charity or an organisation, then start something yourself.
I'm going to finish up with an email from Paula Varley, who sent an earlier one as well from Norwich, who says, I mean, you've answered this to some degree, but it says, why did you decide to get involved in this? Has the issue touched you in a personal way? And in answering that, I guess really the wrap-up question for me is, where does it go from here? How do you do the follow-up to make sure that it's just in the sort of flash-in-the-pan kind of highlight of an issue that just disappears again? How do you keep it on your radar?
You just keep going. I mean, this is the thing. I'm afraid you're the ones who can't keep things on your radar. Media has the concentration span of a grasshopper. But that's not your fault. You guys can't. You have to follow news. People like me follow the issues year after year after year and commit for a lifetime to those issues. That's the only way, you know, because they're us. It's just there, and you do it. So. But this particular thing, I've made myself a tool. I had lots of very great help. So this group of people who got together and made this tool are now taking it on to other cities. So, for instance, I'm taking it to the Vienna conference on human trafficking, and there I'm hoping to take it on into Eastern Europe so we can go to some of the countries of origin. So, for instance, here I met with the presidents of Lithuania and Albania and said, you know, can I bring it? Will you help? And they said yes, and they've got, so that at least you're connected with people whose organisations will help you to move it around. So it's a creative journey that will bring, you know, I think, people together and to look at the subject and also be able to extrapolate stories and issues around sex and paying for sex and why we do that. In every country, so it will, I think, grow rather than anything else. I'm hoping as well to take it to Washington and start in America because they have a huge, huge problem there.
Emma Thompson, I want to wish you luck with that. Thank you very much for talking with us.
Not at all, thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Don't forget, if you have any ideas you'd like us to feature on the show, just send an email to riz@aljazeera.net. We'll see you next time. Street Talk is coming up next.